Hello, everyone, and welcome to this long awaited third episode of the Sam Gaskell podcast. Again, I'm Andy, the dad, the guy in the background, and obviously the star of the show is Sam.
Yeah.
It's been so long since we last sat down and actually either had the time or had the technology to record one of these things. I think 9th of February was the last time. So much to catch up on. So much has happened in Sam's sim racing and also real life racing. And we thought we'd just spend a little bit of time talking through some of that and hopefully giving some value to you, the listener, a little bit of behind the scenes stuff as well. So we'll break this down into two chunks. We'll talk about sim racing first, and then we'll talk about the Global Karting League and all the fun that we've been having in real life. Um, so Sam, wow, so much has happened since February.
Yeah.
I suppose in summary, at that point you'd started racing regularly online
Yep.
through the low fuel motorsport community, and you were building up your ELO ranking points. I think you were probably around the late 4000s at that point. But wow, moved on a little bit since then. Do you want to give us an insight just into um, how you've maintained that momentum of where you were then to probably where you are now, and just give a little bit of context of sort of where you got to on the LFM ELO rankings.
Yeah, as my dad said, I was around 4.8k elo, which now is kind of bang average. That would put me around on the top 300-ish, and I'm now top 20 on 7k elo after about 4 or 5 months of extra grinding and getting better at the game, new cars, new tracks, new everything. And yeah, just been a good ride, but I think we're aiming for higher stuff now in different communities like iRacing and R Factor potentially even. So yeah, that'd be a good thing to aim for.
So let's talk about the sort of some of the things that you've worked on to obviously improve. I mean, for those of you who don't know you, still relatively young, 16. But you've made meteoric progress, and that's all your own hard work. And I wanted to give the listeners a little bit of an insight into how you've done it. I'll give you a few things to maybe think about to try and explain it. But I remember you putting out an Instagram post not so long ago about sort of 10 things that have helped you progress. They're pretty obvious in some ways, but I just want to loiter on them a little bit because I think they're really important for those people out there who love their sim racing, who maybe have done it many years, maybe they've reached a bit of a sticking point, a plateau, and they want to improve. And obviously, you've gone from, zero to, I wouldn't quite say hero yet, but you've gone up pretty quickly, and it has been all your own work with very limited support from outside. And we're talking more about that how it is now momentarily, but you've gone really much self-taught, and I just want to give the listeners an indication of how you've done that. So let's talk first of all about the car control. And I know before on the previous podcast we talked about SimRig and the fact that you've previously been on a Logitech P920, and obviously that's one aspect, but actually it's the pedals and
Big
the
aspect.
car control, the pedal skill that really elevates someone's performance. Do you want to talk a little bit about maybe the rig you've got now and how that's helped you and what qualities it's given you in your driving?
Yeah. So I'll start off with the rig. PSR1 rig, F core steering wheel, and a Simicube Sport 2 wheelbase. Hoising Velk sprints, sprint pedals. They're not the best on the market, but they're definitely the best for their price. Super accurate, uh, super durable, and yeah, apart from that, I highly recommend. Very expensive, but we wanted to go quite overboard with it just so we could make it last compared to maybe some other people who'd go with more of a lesser sim rig, but wanting to get it earlier, essentially. Whereas, yeah, we went the other way. And with the, hold on, what was the rest of the question?
So really just about the how has that better equipment helps you progress quickly as opposed to what the equipment you were using previously when you first started out, and it was, it's more entry level. How has the kit improved your ability to,
Yeah,
um, race better?
yeah. Well, because of the kit, essentially, like my dad said, I was on a Logitech before, and really the main thing that helped on the Switch was the pedals more than the wheel itself, I think, after a bit of time. Because on Logitech, I mean, we can do the exact same lap times on Logitech. It doesn't matter. It's just how quickly you can get there and how consistent you can be at that pace. Whereas on this rig, for example, your consistency, or my consistency at least, jumped like an absolute rocket. Went from, I don't know, doing 141s at Kyle Army, which is pretty slow time, to averaging per like race pace on 139s with no mistakes, no mess ups, no loss in pace or anything. And yeah, it just shows that if you have the right equipment, doesn't necessarily help your lap times, but it helps how consistent you can be at getting to those lap times, and how quickly you can get to those lap times.
Yeah, and I assume it also helps with actually in a race situation, how confident you can be on the brakes, make some moves. You might be able to see the moves on, but if your kit, there's that little bit of uncertainty in the kit.
Yeah.
Again, that can probably lead to some of the things that everyone knows and loves in community racing, where people miss their braking points, or
Yeah.
everyone's on different kit at the end of the day, and especially when you're making your way up in the how do I put it politely, the kind of lower levels. There are people on a lot. Some people are just propped up against their PC on the desk, aren't they? And of course, you've got no idea. Somebody else might be sitting a $10,000 or pound rig, and sometimes it's the equipment they're using that doesn't give them the fidelity or the accuracy either. So
Yeah.
again, it's all the perils of sim racing, and everything that we kind of love about it as well is invested in in the kit as well. So that's cool. Obviously, the kit's made a massive difference. Um, you've talked about learning the tracks, learning the cars. Can I just loiter on maybe people who've been watching you? Why have you picked certain cars? Um, is that something around your own driving style? Is it just wanting to try and invest the time in one platform to be able to really learn it in depth? And maybe also talk about the tracks as well, and how you go about learning them.
Yeah. On the car side, as I'm sure many of you have seen on the post on Instagram, during LFM Pro, I used the Mercedes, and obviously you can't switch cars during the championship. It's a one-car championship. I chose Mercedes for a couple particular reasons, purely because it's in that game can be quite a hard car to get quick in. I want to set myself the challenge, but also I like the car. One of my favorite cars in real life, and it seems to suit my driving style. And yeah, and to be fair, my idols as well in the game drive it. From Williams Esports, Unicorns of Love, which are now Remwell actually. So yeah, and with the other cars like the Porsche that I won Winter Cup in, and the McLaren, for example, that I did a few of the other Spring Cup championships in. Those are both cars that are, well, the McLaren especially is quite an easy car to be quick in, compared to the Porsche. Porsche is quite hard to control, and going back to the equipment side, the McLaren is definitely a lot more friendly, including the Merc, with lower end kit. Whereas the Porsche, it's quite unstable, quite a twitchy car. Whereas some kit like this would be a lot easier to use, um, when it comes around to driving that car. And then obviously with the tracks and learning them, just comes with time, effort, and watching other people drive. Maybe even in the same car. If not, doesn't matter because it's 90% the same lines anyway. And yeah, apart from that, it's a hard journey to get quick. But if you learn a few cars, it's good. But try and stick to one instead of going to five different cars, for example.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to pick up on one point you made there, which I think is fascinating. And you said about watching other people, and of course, sim racing is played out on the internet, obviously, and many people stream, many people make content for YouTube and other platforms, and that really has been your go-to for learning and observing and then applying those skills. If you could give people a few tips on what you are looking for when you watch someone's hot lap, without giving away maybe too many trade secrets, because obviously there's a whole telemetry and setup side to it. But in terms of watching, if someone's got the screen and you can see their dashboard and they're driving, maybe they've got the inputs to the throttle and the brake, you know, should somebody just coming into sim racing, let's say an ACC, look at if they're watching, one of the fastest people streams? What can they pick up on, and how is it, both in terms of maybe two things: skill of inputs, but also just how they navigate around the track. What do you look for?
Big thing is obviously there are very small things which I'll touch upon after this question, but big things are braking zones, where you pick up the throttle, where you turn in, lines. Obviously, like I said earlier, it can depend on the car where you brake. Some cars have better brakes, some cars don't. Some cars have more traction, some cars don't. So it all kind of depends on the car. But yeah, I mean, there are a few tracks that can be harder to learn than others, but if you pay attention to the very small details during the streams or YouTube videos, you can learn a lot. There are a few drivers that do actually do track guides. Tortellini, who is actually called Maciej Malinowski, he came second in Pro Series last season. He's a Veloce driver, and he does some track guides around Donington and those lot in the Porsche. But the small things I wanted to point on was the gear shift points, and the amount of speed they're carrying through corners and etc. and those sort of things. They're things you should 100% look on, because they can count for tenths, even seconds if you are that slow. So yeah.
That's a really good insight, and like I say, just one snippet of kind of, what you've been looking at in order to improve. I want to kind of gloss over all the sort of car setup aspect, because I mean that could be a whole podcast in its own right, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of technical stuff in there. But again, it's probably the same stuff, isn't it? It's watching other people, it's maybe talking to people in the community. It's
Yeah, it
just,
is
there's
mostly.
plenty of content out there. Get stuck in. Let's talk about race strategy though, and you've been doing both sprint and endurance racing now for a bit of time. Um, you know, Tell us a little bit about which one of those you prefer and why, and just how you've learned or how you're learning about the strategy, and how maybe it crosses over into the real life stuff, and what you've learned there.
I definitely prefer sprint racing. More intense, more yeah, more intense and more aggressive with the moves. You can be there's less, well, there's more things to think about, but you can get on with them a lot quicker. Whereas somebody like me who has ADHD, endurance racing can be a bit boring in an aspect unless you're driving. But I guess that's something you got to get used to, and it's something that can also help you as well in endurance racing, being really task focused on fuel consumption or that lot when people are pitting. But in sprint racing, you don't need to look for that. Really, it's just get in the car, drive as quick as you possibly can, gain positions, no mistakes, and see where you finish. Whereas, like I said, endurance racing is, apart from the first hour, um, it's mostly quiet and everybody will be on offset strategies, different fuel amounts, all that lot. And it's just something that's I've always preferred in sprint racing.
Yeah. I mean, picked up on lots of things there, but one thing I wanted to maybe pick up on and, maybe shine a light on is, you know, I've tried very badly to do some sim racing, I'm absolutely awful. And one of the hardest things I find to be able to do is and maybe it's just because I'm just flat rubbish at all of it, is the focus element of it. And you touched upon some of the stuff to do with mental ability there, and you mentioned the words ADHD, and we won't touch upon that now, but the ability to focus and hyper focus for long periods of time on something, you know, recently you maybe for a little bit of a bit of laugh and a joke, you did a 6 hour solo endurance race where you were able to focus for 6 hours. in one stint, which is just phenomenal, to maintain that level of consistency without sort of talking too much about the sort of, um, neurodiversity aspects of it. How how do you manage your mindset through these races in terms of that, hyper focus, that, managing your own, just mindset through a long endurance race, a long stint, even if it's, you know, an hour plus. How have you found ways to do that?
Well, obviously energy drinks and that lot is the obvious one that a lot you'll see a lot of streamers use. But if
Unfortunately,
you're
you don't do that, and I know you don't. So, and that's not
um,
just me being a dad. But I know you
yeah,
don't do that. So
yeah,
how are you managing your? Is it just a
just
natural ability to be in the zone?
it can be that, but also just grinding through it, and just keeping an eye on the timer. Don't do that. Just focus on driving, focus on the car in front, ignore the timer. It will go down, and it won't go down any quicker or any slower. You just got to grind through it because in the it's the first 2 hours of a 6 hour race that go by super quickly, and then the next 4 hours are slow, really slow. And yeah, you just grinding through it and talking to yourself, thinking of things, and yeah, music also helps a lot. So.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose again, talking about sort of, building up that ability to concentrate for longer periods of time. It's all about joining in the community races. You've been super active in the LFM community. I'm sure you want to sort of speak really positively about that whole thing. Um, but in terms of that elo progression that you talked about and getting into the sort of 7,000s plus, that's a lot of grinding every day. That's a lot of racing, it hasn't always gone well. How have you dealt with the setbacks? When I remember you did reach a bit of a plateau and kind of didn't move along for ages, and then you spent a bit of time away from it and came back. Just talk about how you manage your, when you're going to do some racing, when you're not going to do some racing, and just how you manage that process of ascending those ratings.
One thing I'd definitely recommend is only do a race when you feel like it. Don't, because in the end, at the end of the day, it's only a daily. Obviously, you can do it for a bit of fun, but if you're actually trying to gain elo and rating, just drive when you want to at a track you feel like doing. Don't force yourself to, oh, I need to gain elo, I need to drive, because at that point you'll just lose. So yeah, I mean, I'll think about doing a race and I'll be like, nah, I won't do it because I don't feel like it. I haven't really got I haven't warmed up or anything. And that's the easiest way to gain elo. You won't. It's not gaining elo every day, but it's gaining a good amount consistently. Not might even do like 2, 3 races a week maximum, but you'll still be gaining a load of elo from that because you drove well and you were able to win or get on the podium or anything like that. And that's kind of the way I've gone through it. Is take a break. Don't only drive the weeks you like driving. Don't drive a track you don't or a car you don't like driving because just goes downhill from there.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And of course, you talked, I think at the beginning, you mentioned the word LFM Pro. And that's obviously the series in the top split of drivers, sort of weekly race over a season, I think, of 12 races. We've just finished one of the seasons, your first season of competing in that. Just want to speak a little bit about that experience. We won't sort of necessarily dwell on the results, and how that's been, what you've learned from it, and what you take into the next one.
Um, yeah, like I said, we'll just dull over the results, but the experience it was good. Bit up and down with a few of the results, but had to get past them. And yeah, I mean, choosing the Merc was definitely not easy to work with at some of the tracks, considering I hadn't really driven the Merc insane amount, or at least that high of a level beforehand. And I went into it. Merc had a bunch of the tracks that Merc was good at, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna stick to it, focus as much as I can, and just work through it. And honestly, I'm kind of glad I drove with the Merc because it, like I said, gave me a lot of experience, and I actually enjoyed it at the end of at the end of the day. Um, and yeah. I mean, getting through the bad results and the good results, obviously confidence goes up and down, especially in the car, because either you'll struggle at some tracks and some tracks will be really quick at. Incidents will happen, incidents won't happen. You'll have good races, bad races, and you just got to push through it no matter what happens. Don't let anything tumble you down. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's an online championship, which obviously a lot of people will disagree with. But at the end of the day, it's a game, essentially. So it's not real life where you might be costing hundreds of thousands because of a crash, like there was at Spa today. There was a car that flipped. So yeah, lucky
Yeah.
that's not in
Yeah,
real
and
life.
I mean, just on and for those online that follow the community, was it the Zolder event where it
Yeah,
was,
yeah,
a fairly
massive
spectacular
pile up.
pileup?
Yeah,
And you can only imagine if that had been real life, not only from a safety perspective and people getting hurt, but also the amount of damage that needed to be repaired,
yeah,
was
six and
was
a half
pretty
minutes.
ridiculous. So you're right, it is only a game. But nonetheless, some really good progress. And a P11 in your first, uh
Yeah,
championship series. I mean, you must be pretty proud with that
yeah, I
all
was.
in. If
Yeah,
you'd have said at the beginning of it, when you've got to P11, you
I
probably would have
definitely,
taken that.
I definitely could have finished potentially even top 8 in the championship when looking at the points. If I'd stayed more consistent, maybe if I did round 3, didn't crash at Zolder, could have actually done a lot better. But that's something I'm going to aim for next season is consistency and making sure I finish in the top 15 or even better every race instead of just every 2 races I finish nearly in the top 10 or whatever. So something I'm going to work on for sure.
Now, this progress hasn't gone unnoticed, obviously, and up till relatively recently, you were driving on, under your own name or maybe with friends. You know, but clearly, part of getting better is working with others, working with people who are better than you, who have greater knowledge, greater experience, more technical prowess. So, talk to us a little bit about that journey towards, joining a team, and maybe just talk about, who you're now with and what that offers you. Obviously, without again giving too many trade secrets away, and how you can move on from here.
Yes, as some of you probably know already from the Instagram post, I joined Visceral Esports, which is a relatively big team across the iRacing and ACC especially uh, games. They usually, I mean, they've held quite a few good drivers. They still do. Aidan Walsingham, Luke Whitehead, those guys are now Veloce drivers. And we have some of the Williams Academy drivers also driving with us at the moment in SRO, IGTC. Um, and yeah, just getting to learn from those guys now is a massive pleasure because you get to learn so much more than you could have done on your own. And you get setups that you never thought you would have gotten on your own or been able to make or anything like that. And yeah, it's just overall, it's been a really good experience so far, and a great learning curve joining the team. Because obviously a lot of the team members are actually around my age, 16, 17-ish. And yeah, we can all work together in races, all that, and you just get to learn a lot more. Everybody gets to learn a lot more at the same time instead of just on your own. Um, and
Yeah, and so looking forward to next season. Looking forward to maybe competing in more competitions for Visceral. But much to look forward to. And just before we leave the kind of online stuff, I know you had an inaugural stream. You made your sort of Twitch debut a little while ago. You haven't done too much of that. What's your thought on doing more of that? You've got a YouTube channel which, has about 50, 60 followers. I think you post hot laps there, and you also, might dabble a little bit in coaching. Just talk to us about some of the plans you might have or thoughts you might have about how you now continue your development and maybe, add more value to the community through the streaming, the content, and maybe other things.
yeah, with the streaming, definitely want to do more of it. I might start getting on iRacing relatively soon. Try and potentially stream some of those like daily races or whatever. Just for a bit of fun to, I don't know, try out a different game. get into that aspect of sim racing, and then obviously maybe potentially competing in SRO with a Visceral this season towards the end of the championship. But yeah, I mean, I'm currently doing the SRO or qualifier at least for the SRO Community World Challenge with one of my teammates, Zach Doran. And yeah, I might stream the next round, which is in a month. It's at Bathurst, and it's a 6-hour championship. So it's this round, and then the next one is a 3-round championship. So it's gonna be Bathurst and Nords. Might stream those. There's a gap in between both of them. So yeah, that might be the next time. He'll be streaming that as well, for reference, and that's when I'm gonna probably stream next, hopefully. And yeah, just want to get used to doing it more. Might even do some dailies potentially. So yeah, just dabble upon it.
Yeah, that's great. And then any thoughts about in the future maybe doing any coaching to support some of those people that can learn from the pathway you've been on?
Potentially, yeah. I would like to get into it. At the moment, I don't feel like I'm personally qualified quite as much as others, but I do know people who do coaching, Luke Whitehead and Aidan Walsingham and a few others as well. But at the moment, I feel like I'm not quite qualified yet, as I feel like I'm maybe either too young or I haven't got enough experience in telling people how I'm doing it. Because I'm more of a shower than actually explaining stuff, um, which is kind of one of my weaknesses, but it's something I'm looking to get better at. But I do wanna get on with it and see how it goes, make some money off it maybe, because I'm sure some people would like to get coaching. Maybe not some of the top guys, but some of the maybe slower, more community looking drivers. So
That's good. Okay, well let's turn our attention sort of towards the end of this podcast to real life and karting. Obviously, competing in the Global Karting League UK electric karting championship this year, national championships. I think when we last spoke on episode 2, we'd done the winter O plate, so the kind of warm up prelude to the season. Um, we're currently at the end of round 4. Currently positioned in P4 in the championship, which is amazing. Um, we won't loiter too much on the results, but just talk to us about the karts. Talk about the fact that they've had a Generation 2 upgrade, and just generally give people a flavour of electric karting. And a lot of people might be like, "Oh, that I can understand rental karting, Sony karts and biz karts, whatever. I can understand Rotax and all of that, but how does e-karting fit into that? Where does it sit? Is it any good? And generally, thoughts about GKL."
as you were saying, like on all the Rotax and all that lot, a lot of people think, oh, it's electric or it's not cool, or where's all the sound and all that lot. But those people tend to have never driven an electric car or even been around them. And to be fair, that I mean, they still reach speeds of like 70, 80 mile an hour on the straights, or at least the Gen 2 carts we use now. Um, and I mean, it's not the speed, it's just the sound. Yes, it's a bit weird to get used to, but the handling of the carts and all that lot, especially with the motor, the braking can be a bit weird. There's no engine braking. It's essentially like try lifting off in a car or something and letting it roll is basically what it is. So it's quite, it's quite weird. But once you get used to it, it's fun. I think people should try out electric carts more. As to be honest, in the future, there's going to be a lot more of it. And yeah, I mean, it's quite funny shouting at your friends in an electric car and they can actually hear you, as we've experienced before in our first time an electric go kart at, I think it was Eastleigh, I think it was. I got shouted at by an older person while overtaking on the yellows, which was quite funny, which is, I think, something everybody should look for in karting when it comes to having fun. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, and in terms of these Generation 2 carts, that's obviously give them, an upgrade. Just talk us through, as a driver, what those upgrades have meant for those carts and what they now offer. I know you've talked about, better brakes, better this, that, and the other? Just has it made it more fun? More is it better for the racing? What's been the impact of the Generation 2 karts within that series?
Well, like I said, they're a lot quicker than the older ones. They've had a few issues recently with the motors, but apart from that, I mean, the kart parity is super close when the karts aren't blowing up. But the brakes are better. Throttle feels better as well. Doesn't feel as twitchy or as aggressive as before. Because before you used to go on 50% throttle and it would feel like you're on 100%, whereas these ones feel a little bit less, I guess, aggressive on that behalf. But yeah, karts feel a lot better. Obviously, racing at higher speeds is more fun. Obviously, respect as well in GKL, but overall, it's been more fun in these carts. And I think I don't know when they're going to get Gen 3 carts. I'm sure they're not going to get them for quite a while, but I think I'll only be able to experience Gen 2 carts for it's like this season and next season maximum. Anyway, because it's age limit of 17, and I'm currently 16 at the moment. So yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. But at the moment, it's going well. I'm enjoying it.
That's great. Well, listen, it's been amazing to chat to you, Sam. I
You
know
too.
after the last one we said we'd do one quite regularly. We massively failed to do that.
Yeah, entirely.
But it'd be really good to sit down more often, make some more of these. So I play out to those that listen and consume this. If there's particular things you want Sam to talk about, maybe content specifically about, the sim driving, particular bits, do let us know. We'd be really happy to sit down, and also we'd be happy to have some guests on this podcast as well. We're
I have a few
using the
names I want to
StreamYard
get on
system, so we
here.
can have up to ten guests. So we look forward to the next one. But from Sam and I for now,
Yeah,
thanks for taking the
thank
time
you.
to listen to us, and we'll speak again soon. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Bosh.